my
Yeah.
name's Scott Badeau. I'm here on the Mere Mortals mountain biking podcast, and I have a very special guest today. Tom Place from Outbound Lighting is going to talk to us a little bit about the joys of night riding and some of the specifics about the equipment that you need for that. So, Tom, would you mind giving a brief introduction of both yourself and the company?
Sure. Yeah. My name's Tom. I've been in LED lighting world for uh, 15 years now. I lose track, but I was in R&D at Cree, which is a major LED manufacturer. So pretty much every portable lighting device for the past 20 years has used Cree LEDs. And so that led me into making lights for bikes because the only thing I do outside of work is mountain bike with friends. So it felt like the right combination. And I partnered up with Matt, who's the founder of Outbound Lighting. So he also a lighting nerd from the rally automotive space. He decided after going on a night ride with a buddy of his on a mountain bike, not as big of a mountain biker, so he didn't know the industry equipment as much. And his friend gave him like a $600 light from a competitor, and he thought, this really is the
Yeah.
best the industry has to offer, and he thought he could do better. So he started up in his apartment living room, and after year and a half or so, I found him and we started partnering on product development, and now we're 7 years in or so, and we've got 9 employees total, and we're still a small company, but I think we're doing all right. We're growing and we're stable, and pretty excited about the response we've got from our customers so far.
Yeah, that's awesome. You guys started, what was it, around 2017 with the Kickstarter campaign? Can you tell a little bit more about, how that started? And then it's interesting you bring up that light because I've had a similar experience where very expensive, very sort of heavy and complicated to mount to the bike versus you guys have a pretty dramatically different approach. Maybe compare and contrast a little bit more on that if you could.
Sure, yeah, and just to elaborate a bit on Matt's kind of origin story, the ride he went on, he was given a Knight Rider Pro 2800, I think, at the time. So large external battery pack that's heavy and straps to the frame, and the optics for that are off the shelf reflectors for flashlights. And in fact, the LEDs they were using there wasn't even the reflector. The LED was, or the wasn't even the right optic for that LED. Like they weren't designed for each other. So it was basically just a round spot beam with a harsh cutoff edge. And there's no attempt at optical engineering, which, on some level makes sense because bike lighting in particular is a niche within a niche. And most of the companies are pretty small. Even Knight Rider, they kind of started the game 30 years ago, and they have in the realm of 35 employees or so. So they're still a small company relative to these much bigger companies. So having the resources and know-how in-house to do custom optical engineering isn't always in the cards. You have to make that part of your mission statement, so to speak. So that's what Matt's really good at. He's an optical design engineer, so he decided to focus on the optics and get a product off the ground that brought the optics to the trail, and then work on kind of refining that. And that's where I came in as the voice of the mountain bike industry, just because I'm the biker who spends all his time doing that. So I basically said, I can help you with the industrial design aspects, like what makes it a good product for biking specifically. And you can do, Matt does pretty much everything else. He does a lot, everything from website design to SEO to finances to mechanical design. But we basically have complementary skill sets. So the stuff that I suck at, he's good at, and vice versa. So that's what led us ultimately together to move towards a self-contained system. So you don't have an external battery pack. Everything's contained within the device. It's USB-C rechargeable, because we've gotten to a point with battery technology and LED technology. We've kind of reached this asymptote where there's not any, 50% gains year over year coming. But it's good enough that we can get a lot of power and a lot of runtime into a self-contained package and not have to deal with wires or strapping anything to the bike. So for our approach, at least, we discovered very quickly that the overwhelming majority of customers that night ride, particularly on trails, are riding local trails that they know, and they're riding for 2 hours or less. So they don't, if you have something that causes more setup issues, it takes longer to get it right on your bike or it's finicky. It's just another excuse for people not to ride in the winter in the dark when they already have plenty of excuses not to ride. So we wanted to make the system as easy as possible so that it's literally 2 seconds to just pop the light on the bike and get off and going. Um, it's kind of the barrier to entry is easier to overcome that way. So that's what led us to self-contained lights, and right now we're just really focused on optimizing each specific product for the particular use case that they're going to be used in. So, trail handlebar mounted light versus a trail helmet mounted light have very different requirements. Road lighting, obviously, very different from trail riding, and the lighting needs to change as a result. So, rather than just making a bike light that can be used anywhere and is kind of not that great at any particular use case, we're making ones that are purpose built for specific use cases.
Yeah, I love that. And I rarely make brand specific recommendations on the podcast or even to the team that I coach, but this is an exception because of the exact things you mentioned. I've tried every light out there or had the youth that I coach show up with every light
Right.
out there, and it just is a big barrier to entry when it's difficult to mount or it's unreliable from a duration standpoint, or even certain lights that I've put on my handlebars pre dark time. And then I look down, and by the time I'm ready to turn it on, it's missing because it's
Yeah.
slid off of its mount. I won't mention any brand names, but I know a lot of people have had similar issues. And so I love you guys' approach of just making it easy to enjoy this aspect of biking. So to that point, for somebody who's not ridden in the evening before, can you kind of give a high level, at least from your personal experience or opinion, the joys of doing so?
Oh yeah, it's all very personal, right? Everybody has different motivations for doing it. I think um, I'll explain kind of my perspective, but then generally speaking, our customers are riding at night in the winter because in most of North America, you get to a point in winter where you come home from work and it's dark. So you either ride in the dark or you don't ride, and not riding is not a tenable solution for a lot of people. So there's necessity, which is one thing, but then I think the thing I hear most frequently from customers as to why it's enjoyable for them is because most rides are on local trails that you know well, and after a while you ride a trail several hundred times, things become routine. You know where every rock and root is, you know exactly where your line should be, and riding at night is different. It just mixes things up a bit. And I think one of the common misconceptions is that it's going to be harder because you can't see as well because it's dark out. But much like any equipment choice, if you get the right equipment, it doesn't necessarily make it harder. It could actually make it easier. And just as an example, riding out in a forested area where you get a lot of sunshine, what happens when you're going through the trees? You get this like stroboscopic effect from the sun cutting through the trees, hitting you right in the face. And it's really annoying. Unless you have a very wide visor on your helmet. It's makes it really difficult to see and process the terrain. At night, the nice thing is that the lighting is always consistent. It's always the same. It's coming from the same location. So you're getting the same like shadows projected on the ground. It's not like dusk versus morning where the sun angle changes. So the trail looks totally different. It's consistent. So in a way, night riding can actually be easier in that regard because it's the same every time. And you're in control of that, right? You set up the lighting the way you want for your type of riding, which, there's not one correct solution for every type of rider and type of terrain, desert riders versus Pacific Northwest and so on. But you get what works for you and you go. One of the things that got me into this, where I bridged from working at Cree to just kind of jumping into the bike light world, was working with Clint at Industry 9, actually. He loves night riding more than perhaps anybody have ever met. So every Tuesday they have a big company night ride that is gnarly. It's a lot of shuttling, it's a lot of riding, it's a lot of pedaling too, and it's an experience. But what he loves more than anything is getting out in the middle of the forest, away from civilization, away from everybody else, and just turning off your lights and being out in the darkness, in the middle of nature, because you just don't get that experience any other time. In the daytime, there's so much more stimulus and things going on. At night, you can go for a ride and just stop and take a moment and just breathe, separate from everything else. And it's this very visceral experience for him, and it's great. I'm here for it. But I think what you can get out of night riding is really just anything. It's just worth trying. If you ride a lot and you like riding, you might as well try it.
That certainly lines up with my experience and sort of how I fell into a love of this. I think my first night ride was with a high school NICA team. And I remember going up these switchbacks and thinking how cool it was to watch sort of the light show. It reminded me of, I used to live in Steamboat Springs, Colorado, and they'd have like the ski, coordinated night shows with flares and that sort of thing. And it was really cool. And then to your point about what the I-9 team will do, we got up to the top of a hill and everybody turned off their lights, and you kind of look around and you appreciate being in peace and silence and having the city surrounding you. That was sort of one experience where we were at a city park trail system. The other one, which we can talk about a little bit later as to the different events that people can see you guys at, but 24 Hours in the Old Pueblo, I rode solo last year, I guess previously, earlier in this year. And it's just such a different experience during the day versus the night. You ride a lot of laps at that event. I remember thinking how cool it was to see cactus, which, I mean, I live in Arizona, but I'm up in the mountains, so I don't see a ton of that. But to see the cactus fly by me with the lights on, and even being able to see further ahead as to the next rider that I'm going to try to pass, just because I can see their lights on. So that's really awesome to hear that my experience is similar to what you've heard from others. And even just the kids that I coach really love riding at night and seeing all the animals that are out, right? Because you can see them right in front of you when they're more active. So that kind of covers some of the positives. What have you seen maybe intimidates people about night riding, and how do you kind of get them over that hump?
Oh, everything. I think that in general, people find excuses not to do things. And I'm not saying that that's, that's neither here nor there. Sonia Looney talks a lot about that in a podcast from years ago, just about not having excuses. So it's cold today. I don't want to go ride. Oh, it's raining a little bit. Like, no, just get rid of the excuses. Just go do it. You're going to feel better after doing it. I think for night riding in particular, there's the initial cost. It's another piece of equipment. It's another thing that you have to have. It can be scary because you're reliant on that thing. If you are on a bike ride and your derailleur fails, you can't pedal, but the bike still works. You can roll out, you can make it out, you can see. If your light fails, you have one light and something happens, you crash, you break something in the middle of the dark, you are pulling out your cell phone, hopefully, to use the flashlight to walk out slowly. Like it's a different level of reliance on that piece of equipment. It can be scary depending on where you are in the country or in the world for what kind of critters you have out there. You mentioned the animals. Arizona's nice because you get rattlesnakes, but generally they're pretty sleepy. There's not a lot of predators coming after you. There's not bears. There's not cougars. It's nice. Like when I lived in Scottsdale, I felt really safe going out in the McDowell's by myself for hours and not going to run into anything, not going to be unsafe. Pacific Northwest, the further north I get from here, I live in Bellingham now. I'm not so worried about it in Bellingham. We got some cougars around here, but it's very rare to have any reports of that. Further north you get, the more grizzlies, out in Squamish. Like, that's scary. Actually, one thing that sticks with me today, it's not particularly scary, but if you don't like spiders, it is. In North Carolina, where I grew up riding, there's a lot of spiders. And there's a lot of times you go out and it's dry and you ride at night and everything looks like it's like glistening, like there's dew on the leaves. And then somebody told me one day, yeah, those are spiders because their eyes are spherical. They're retroreflective little spheres. So all the little glints back at you from your helmet light, those are spider eyes. So it made me very attuned to the fact that I do not want to fall off that trail anywhere or I'll be covered in spiders. So that can be scary. Um, and then I think just because a lot of people just haven't done it. It's like hitting a feature for the first time until you know how it feels. You're like, oh, okay, now I can chase that feeling. I know the speed, I know what the compression's like, whatever it is. Night riding is kind of like that, where if you've never done it before, it can just be intimidating. You're going out in the dark, and you don't know until you do. Um, yeah.
Yeah, that's excellent. I've run into similar um, objections, I'll call them. One of the things that I have the group rides that I lead do is just, the lead person put on a timber bell, for example, right? Because we do have uh, a fair number of lions up here in Prescott where I live. And so just
Hmm.
giving them fair warning that we're coming seems to help. And then, I'll ask you a question about what makes you guys' lights different. There
Hmm.
is a lot of reliability benefits there, but anything can fail, right? And so I have people just bring like a cheap headlamp as a backup, right, just in case. But speaking to you guys's differences, maybe one of the questions I got from a listener is what makes your lights better than another. And this is a person who is currently using an alternative brand, and I'm kind of begging them to spend the money on Outbound because they've seen in many night rides where they have problems and I don't. So I'll let
Yeah.
you specifically answer that.
Sure, and this isn't meant to be an advertisement for us, but we can just kind of talk through, design features and why certain aspects need to be taken into consideration at all, because there's a long list of design features that matter, from everything from the mounting to the battery indicator, knowing how much juice you got left when you start, when you're in the middle, when you finish. Um, the beam pattern is obviously a huge one for us, and I'll elaborate more on that, being the optical guys in the industry. The user interface, the types of modes and how you cycle through them, all of that can make a huge difference. And then we mentioned the external battery packs, your specific bike setup, how you get them on there. That all really matters. So, your question about what kind of objections people have to night riding, what intimidates them, we kind of approach design from that perspective as well,
Mm-hmm.
rather than asking people what they love about a product or another light. We ask them what they hate. What's the thing that makes them almost not want to use another light? And that could be, oh, it's an external battery pack and it's a 6 foot long cable. And every time I have to mount it, I have to wrap it around the head tube multiple times or tie it up with a zip tie or whatever. And it's just annoying. Like it takes an extra couple of minutes and it flops around on the trail. Like, okay, we can address that feature. Um, or it's micro USB. And there's only one way to put it in and it always takes 3 tries. Um, it's annoying. It just, you know, okay, let's go to USB-C. The mount itself, quick release mechanism. Some are plasticky and they wear over time and then they start wiggling. Once you notice a light that's wiggling, and so the beam is shaking on the trail, it's kind of like noticing a creek. If you're chasing like a bottom bracket creek or something, and then you notice it and you can't stop it, and it just drives you crazy on the rides. Once you go to a light that doesn't have any wiggle in the mount, you realize, oh, wow, that was really annoying. I'm so glad I got rid of that. And then like beam pattern, or let's say user interface. So there are some lights that have high, medium, low, daytime strobe, SOS function, and you have to cycle through all of them to change basic settings like brightness. That will drive people crazy. Simple things like that to think of all go into that design process. And I think beam pattern is perhaps the most important and critical for us. We're designing a light. The whole point of that is to put light on the trail so that you can see where you're going. At least for mountain biking, at least. We can talk about road bikes if you feel like it, but I generally don't. The way we spread that light is all dependent on the optical design. We get to choose where that goes. It's not easy, but we could do it. So for a handlebar mounted trail light. Very different requirements from a helmet light because your bars are never quite pointed exactly where you're going. A lot of times they are, but if you're steering into a switchback, for example, there's a large portion of that turn where your bars are not actually pointing down the trail where you need to see. So if you have a narrow beam on your handlebar light, the moment you turn your bars a little bit, the light is off the trail. And then, particularly in wooded areas, you got a lot of foliage. The trails are tight. If your narrow beam light points off the trail, it flashes off of bright green leaves and things. Now you're getting this bright spot in your field of view that's not what you need to see, and it messes with your night vision and your contrast, making it even harder to see. So we design our handlebar light to be a super wide beam and very even, so that as your bar moves back and forth a bit, you're not getting these bright flashes and changes in contrast, but then also you're not losing the trail entirely. So that the handlebar light is actually providing value and not just like a fill-in afterthought. Helmet light, similarly, because you are controlling exactly where it's pointing with your head, we can use a narrow beam on that. The opposite of the handlebar light. As a result, we can use less power to light up the same or a smaller area to the same intensity. Because people talk a lot about lumens and brightness. That's not what is critical. What's critical is the intensity on the trail. And you've got to cover the entire field of view, right? Not just one bright spot. So you can pump all that light into a single bright spot and not be able to see anything. Or you can cover the entire field of view with a little bit less intensity, but an even intensity, and your eyes respond a lot better. It's a lot easier to process the terrain, having peripheral coverage. So we're designing the helmet lights to be narrower beam because you're controlling where the main spot is, but then still have a soft gradient off to the peripheral so that there's never an edge to the beam. It's not like a projected circle and then outside that circle is totally dark, which is what a lot of other competitor lights with reflectors off the shelf from like flashlight optics are getting. And then we're designing them to blend together so that the two lights don't operate as like two spots bouncing around the trail, which can be another distracting you from what you're supposed to be looking at, which is the trail. We want them to blend so that when you're turning into a switchback, you're not noticing this bright spot turning. You're just noticing that everything is smoothly illuminating where it needs to be illuminated. All that can make for just a much less, what's the word? You can definitely make for a less distracting experience, but just a more pleasant experience. And you can ride better and faster as a result because you're able to process the terrain at speed without having to actively think about, I need to point my head down in order to see that spot in front of the bike. Otherwise, it's going to be dark. You just ride in a natural position. Yeah.
Yeah, that's an excellent verbal description of my experience with your lights. For anybody who has an Outbound dealer close to them, you guys make a display unit that I really like that shows the beam pattern. I think you have that online as well, but it really helps accentuate this point because prior to getting your lights, I had that challenging experience you mentioned where I had a very narrow beam field on my handlebars and then a very narrow one on my helmet. And for those who, have not ridden at night before, you can do with just one. I have plenty of people who go with me with just one, but having the both, shows you not only where your bike is pointing currently on the handlebars, but, around a corner where you're about to point the bike, you can look early with the head and that sort of thing. And it was really disorienting, honestly, to have that black space or gap between the two and to sort of wonder, well, gosh, what is between those two, especially if it's not a trail that I've ridden. And I'm a big fan of, using your peripheral vision for riding, and you guys' solution is the only one I've found to do that. And then, just to accentuate one really simple but powerful benefit I've had out of your lights is, the helmet mount is just clipped on with the standard GoPro mount, right? And a lot of bikers already have that on their helmet. Makes it super easy versus, other brands that have this little strap you have to put on your helmet and that sort of thing. And so when I go riding sort of close to sunset, it's really easy just to throw your portal or hangover light in a pocket, and if I need it, I just plop it up there.
Just snap it on.
One story I'll tell that sort of accentuates all of these benefits in one quick tale is I was out with IMBA chapter doing a group night ride, and it was a variety of ages. The group is actually called 8 to 80, meaning all ages.
Nice. Yeah.
Um, Pretty much everybody's battery either failed completely or was very close to it by the end. And I kind of got about 2/3 of the way back, and I put on Evo Light in the high mode. And to your point, it just provided a very gradual drop off of the light so that everybody could kind of see a little bit. There wasn't any
Hmm.
harsh, shadow over a rock or anything like that. And we got back to the parking lot, and everybody's asking me like, well, how is that possible, right? And it's like, well,
Yeah.
you get what you pay for, and the
Yeah.
design elements, the reliability, that sort of thing was very important for my purchase. So
Mhm.
talk maybe about the warranty, because I've had an excellent experience with you guys on that, and I've seen some of the funny Instagram posts and stuff you have where people have sent stuff in or opened it up, and you have a message in there, right, about the warranty inside the
Oh
product, if I
yeah.
remember right.
Yeah, we put little hidden messages on all of our electronics for people because we get, and I actually have friends at other bike light companies that I chat with periodically, and it's there's plenty of space in here for other folks, and so I like to leave little messages in there. So we've got one that
Yeah.
points out a top secret microchip on our board, just so that when they do competitive analysis, they can focus on that. Um,
Like the
yeah,
flux capacitor.
yeah, early on, Matt and I, thankfully, were very much on the same page, and I think this is colored by both of our personal experiences with warranties. Because everybody in the bike industry, if you have a bicycle, you've probably had to warranty something at some point, and the way that company responds really colors how you
Yeah.
feel about them, and whether or not you want to purchase something else from them or keep riding the thing that you have. And so there's a couple motivating factors for us to basically just cover everything under warranty. Um, First is we want people to love our products and to be excited about using them, to want to support us. And if we take care of people, then they do. So everybody wins. It helps us sleep better at night. Um, and they are just kind of not ambassadors, but they're just excited about our stuff, which makes for a more enjoyable experience. If you're really excited about a new product and you want to be riding it, that makes you want to ride more. It just puts you in a better mood for all of it. So that's always a good thing. And then second, if we design a quality product, then we shouldn't go bankrupt trying to replace it. If
Yeah.
people constantly have failures, and if we had a 50% failure rate, we would do one of two things. We either wouldn't replace everything for free,
Yeah.
or we would redesign the product so we don't have 50% failure rate. So it's highly incentivizing us to make a reliable, bulletproof product. And we get a lot of information from our customers when things happen, so that we know. One of our policies is you have to be kind and honest with us. Kind because we're humans, and it's just bikes, man. Like, just calm down. We know something went wrong. We're going to take care of you. Just be nice to us. And then honest, because I don't want you telling me I was just riding along and it split in half. Like, no. You ran headfirst into a tree at 20 miles an hour and the light made first contact. Yeah. Okay. So it split in half. Great. We can take care of that. I want to know that because I want to know if it's a design failure or a manufacturing issue or something that I can address, or if it's a crash, because crashes happen, and nothing is invincible. So we cover crashes. Just tell us what it is so I don't have to overreact and try to redesign something that doesn't need to be redesigned. I can make a better product more efficiently, and you're still going to get taken care of. So thankfully, Matt and I were always on the same page. He worked for a company previously that had one product that had a 25% failure rate, and the owner's response was, whatever, just send out replacements. It's like, yeah, but we could spend an extra $1 to replace this one gasket and solve this problem. It's like, no, we'll just replace them. And it's dumb from a financial standpoint. It's really dumb from a brand reputation standpoint. It creates extra work. It's just like, No, we got into this to design good products. Let's design good products. We want to use this. And, for me personally, I am a very socially dependent engineer. I have a lot of friends that I love to ride with, and I want all of my friends to use my stuff. I want them to have the best experience possible. So if anything goes wrong, I'm not blowing it off or saying, it's probably your fault. I take it very personally. It's something I need to work on, actually. So having a reliable product is really important because I want to have the best for all of my friends and family that are actually using the product. So that all goes into our warranty where we basically cover everything. We have a 3-year limit on it, just so that if you are a dick to us, we can tell you to screw off. But if you're nice to us, like we just covered somebody the other day who has a product from 6 years ago, the first edition Hangover off the pre-order, they got cheap, finally had an issue with it, and like, yeah, we'll fix it, no problem, because he was really nice about it.
Yeah.
It's just that simple.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I've definitely experienced distaste with brands based on high failure rate of their equipment. And the answer is just, send it in. We'll sit on it for 6 weeks in the warranty department, because we're understaffed, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
Versus you guys, I can't remember if it was this year or last year at the 24 Hours in the Old Pueblo, but, I've got a couple kids and I was running a youth team and all that, and it's expensive, right? So I was trying to save a little bit of money. And so my son, was also at the age of freshman in high school. Stuff breaks a lot at that age. And so I was honestly going to ride with you guys' stuff for me and some cheaper stuff that I already owned for him. And then I started thinking about it as I got everything set up, and I thought, you guys are there. I'm going to buy him a set because even if he breaks it, his team was one behind the podium because somebody overslept, but you guys are going to take care of him, right? Because it
Yeah.
wasn't intentional or it wasn't stupid or anything like that. It just stuff happens. And when he had a crash actually at Bean Peaks, which is a new downhill gravity trail system here in Prescott, he had the mount on the bars as during the day, but that crash broke the mount. And your team wanted me to send in photos so that they could see like what happened, right? So that they could try to make it stronger and that sort of thing. And that was just awesome because first of all, the mount was barely damaged despite, he had a concussion and all sorts of stuff, broke on his bike, but your mount was pretty good, right? And then I had another example where my Evo just wouldn't go into the mount anymore. And I just called up to order a new one, and they're like, well, no, we'll send you one, but can you send us photos, right? Because we want to know, is it the mount that's the problem or the actual backing on the light, that wore off? And I just love the approach that you guys have there. So yeah, that's really helpful. I appreciate you comparing and contrasting. And just one thing to go back on my notes, a little bit as to the intimidation factor of night riding and sort of ties into the 24 Hours in the Old Pueblo. So that first night lap, a lot of people come off the course and they go right to your tent to buy a way better light than what they brought. And then I had talked to your team about, my son was going to start a sort of a business to go to these night races with everything you need for when it gets cold, right? So good lights, he's going to sell your lights. And then what I wanted to point out is good cold weather clothing, right? So just, Pearl Izumi or similar, something that, the neoprene that you can wrap up your arm and legs when it gets cold and then unzip it if you get too hot, things like shoe covers, certain types of bike shoes, your feet can get pretty cold there, that sort of thing. So that's one thing I wanted to plug for people in certain climates, right? Certainly in Arizona, it's a lot cooler at midnight than it was at noon. So, if you're thinking about doing this for the first time, it doesn't take a lot of money to buy those clothing items. So you've talked about the end result of you guys' unique design and manufacturing process, which is a very high quality product. Can you back up a little bit as to, so you get the feedback from people about what they do and don't like. talk to me a little bit about that process and maybe even correlate it to like I was very excited about the new portal light, but you guys had some delays. And the reason for those delays was because you wanted to ship a really good product and you already
Yeah.
had a really good product in the hangover. So it wasn't
Right.
like this huge gap. But I really respected that you guys, did push that out for the right reason. So maybe talk to me just a little bit about how you go through the design, how you source the parts, and then you assemble everything in Chicago. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah. So I'm glad that you respect that approach. When people are anxiously waiting for a new product, they're less respectful, let's say. Yeah, that, Portal was, we learn a lot every time we design a new product. We take all of the previous information we have from other products and what did and didn't work well there. What the common failure modes are, how we want to change the architecture to eliminate those failure modes and improve on weight, ergonomics, whatever. And every time we do that, we run into new unforeseen issues. So we learn a lot every single time. And Portal, I won't go too much into the weeds, but we had some supply chain issues trying to source a specific type of thermally conductive polymer that was only manufactured by one manufacturer in one plant in Kentucky, and that plant was down for 9 months.
Oh, okay.
Um, so that was a delay, first of all. So then we're trying to find other grades of polymer that can be molded in the geometry we had to have it molded for our shells, and had good flow properties, but then wasn't brittle and still gave us the proper thermals. Like, there's just a lot that went into it, and we did all this work, and then finally they got us supply and we could keep going. But even that, that's also why we didn't take anybody's money. We didn't take pre-orders. There are lots of people saying, no, I just want my spot reserved in line. I'll give you money now and wait. We're like, no, I don't want your money until we have a product, for a number of reasons. Primarily because I don't want the pressure to get something out faster at the expense of anything else, at the expense of quality, finish, reliability, all that. We want to be damn sure it's good before we send it out, not just because we cover everything, but because we want you to get what you paid for.
Mm-hmm.
And that takes time sometimes. But then, the process for us to design a product start to finish, we start with a specific application or use case, and we get feedback from our customers, from writers at events, just from talking to industry folks from all over, to try to design the best product for as many people as possible. So we're basically starting at the bottom of the pyramid. Here are all these different use cases that cover the largest group of writers. And then when we're going up the pyramid, it's where we're adding features that are, a little more niche, or very specific types of users need them, but not everybody. So the reason we're doing that is because we don't want to add cost complexity to products that people don't need and don't want to pay for.
Yeah.
Because then it prices people out of something that is enough for what they're using. So we start with as simple a product as possible before we start adding cost and complexity. And then we spend a lot of time not just on the product design itself for the end use, but then how do we get there? That design for manufacturing and assembly, DFMA, popular acronym, is really the whole point of that is how do you make a product that's really efficient and simple to assemble? Fewer number of parts, fewer number of steps involved. The faster that you can assemble it, the better to keep up with production. But then also the fewer number of parts, the less points of potential failure you have. You make a more robust design in that process. So because we're assembling in-house, we are highly incentivized to make a product that's really easy to assemble, that is robust, because we have to keep up with it. So we're designing machinery, robotics to assemble certain stages of each product, so that we can do that not just more efficiently with fewer people, but we can also do it really repeatably, very consistently. Even quality control, just part inspection. We know what features to inspect that are critical for fit, for seal tolerances, so forth and so on. And we do that ahead of time so we can fail out pieces before they get assembled into a full product. So the actual manufacturing and assembly process is I would say the majority of the focus once we have a concept in mind. You know, we need to get a shell that's about this size to fit this battery and these optics. Okay, how do we make that so that we can actually mold it for a shell or machine it or overmold it with our TPU overmolds? And then is it going to give the right thermal properties? All of that. The manufacturing is perhaps more critical to us because we're actually making it ourselves. It's not a off the shelf thing or a turnkey. You know, we're not sending it off to a contract manufacturer to have them do it. We're still doing our electronics right now in Gilbert in Arizona. So Phoenix Valley area. Got a really good relationship with DS Electronics there. They've been just spectacular to work with, just from terms to, you know, because we're a very seasonal company. Not a lot of people buying lights in the middle of summer, except in Arizona. That's really the only state where we sell about as many in summer as we do in winter. Um, so they've been super helpful on that. And then, you know, just being able to make changes quickly. If we see something happening, we can stop it and address it in the middle of assembly, not after we've got 1,000 lights built and shipped to us from somebody else. So we could be a lot more proactive on our redesign standpoint, because a lot of products, even, you know, Portal, it's our newest product, and every component of that design, let me think, all but one, I think, have had fairly significant tooling changes to this
Okay.
point, where we see something pre-production before we start assembling, we make some tweaks. We see something after we get it and realize, oh, this is failing like this in the field. When it does fail, we can fix that. So we change that, and we just do rolling updates. That's part of the reason we haven't launched a new hangover in a long time, is we've actually changed every single part of Hangover since it was initially launched. The lower shell, the USB door, the battery, the electronics, the LED driver, the charger IC, everything, all the materials. But we didn't launch a new product, and there's a couple different reasons for that. One, it's because we rolled each of these changes in as it was needed. We started seeing you know, weird charging negotiation issues. We changed the charger IC, we rolled that into design, and it's just a change so that any new product has it. We didn't want to wait for a new product to make it better. And we also don't like, I mean, we're getting a little tangential here, but we don't like playing the, you know, you need to buy a new light every year because this one's 10% brighter. It's like, no, no, no. This is the light. This is how much light we think you need for this use case, for this beam pattern. It's a good light. You don't need to replace it every year. If you did, then it wouldn't be a very good product. So we didn't want to say, oh, this is the new V2 or V3 Hangover, when it is a better product now than when we launched it. So if you got one 6 years ago, sure, you could upgrade. But if your original light is still working great, then keep using it, you know? So I think from a design process, from feedback, like initial concept of the product use case, to rider feedback, industry feedback, to manufacturing, to assembly, each part of that plays a critical role in actually shaping the product at the end of the day. And just as an example, you know, from a competitive analysis standpoint, I think we own one of every other light in the industry from every manufacturer at this point. And we've torn them all apart, and we know exactly what people are doing and why. And there are some good things to learn from that. But just as important, we can make a list of all the, you know, I mentioned mounting, user interface, battery indicator, button ergonomics, even just from like the on button for, you know, preventing accidental turn on in a bag of clothes without a lockout mode, versus being able to feel it through thick gloves when it's on your helmet without having to, you know, poke around. All that stuff. We just make a list of all these different features, and we try to be better in every single one of them. It's like, all right, well, this light is great. The button's really easy to find, but it accidentally gets turned on really easily when you toss it in a gym bag or something. How do we redesign the bezel around the button so that it's physically more difficult to do that without making it harder to actually press with your finger? Each one of those exercises is critical to making the complete product. So we're not just saying pump as much power as we can in there, or we need this beam pattern and then we're done. We're looking at everything pretty holistically as to how we can make it better than somebody else or than a previous design or what have you.
I really, really appreciate that. And you guys have some really interesting photos on your website, and I'm assuming social media as well, showing the assembly process that I found really interesting. And I didn't know that you sourced the electronics and that sort of thing locally here as well. So, just a couple more questions, and then I appreciate your time. You guys come to a lot of events. I mentioned, one down in Tucson. There's others throughout the nation, but maybe talk a little bit about, if somebody's coming to a 24-hour race, which races you plan to come to in the future. And then, I like not only the ability to talk with you guys and learn about the lights and see the different lights, but at least at the old Pueblo, you have free charging stations, right? And I don't even think you care if they're your lights. Don't you have like a variety of
Huh.
USB cables and you just let anybody charge?
Yeah, no, we're our goal for Old Pueblo, for example. We don't do as many events as I would like to. Honestly, we just don't have a staff for it. It's usually me and my customer service manager, Jason. Unfortunately, mostly Jason now, driving around, from Washington down to Arizona and New Mexico. It's a lot of calories and money and time to make them
Yeah.
happen. So right now we've got 5 events per year, main events that we go to, and then a few other smaller ones that we try to support as we can. Old Pueblo is certainly the most raucous, the biggest one. It's 2,000 racers in the middle of the desert. Everybody's outside of town camping, so you're all there together every night leading up to the race. You're kind of on your own out there, right? So our entire goal for that event is not to show up with new lights and sell them. Our goal is racer support. So that means doesn't matter who you are, what brand of lights you're using, you have to have lights to make it through the night laps. We want to make sure that that is successful. So we bring, obviously all of our lights and parts. We have a gigantic custom made charging station so we can charge 120 lights at a time. And we've got power strips. I've got, for competitor lights that have like a wall plug, like a proprietary adapter for their charging. I've got a bunch from Light and Motion, from Knight Rider, from Lupine, from Magic Shine that I just have all the time. So if somebody forgets their charger at home, I probably have one, so we can get them charged up. I also bring spare parts for Lupine, for Light and Motion, for Knight Rider. So if somebody crashes and breaks their Knight Rider mount, great, I've got one here. Take it and run. And easy peasy, they have a good experience. It's part of what Todd, the event promoter, likes. He wants to have everybody have the best experience. It's part of why we're there. It's also, everybody wins, right? Like if we help people out when they're in need, they will think about us when they need new lights. And it's not like everybody who gets a free part from us ends up buying a light set, but they remember that we took care of them when we didn't have to, per se. And also myself and Jason, my customer service manager, we are big saps, just emotionally soft people. We just freaking love problem solving and making people's day. If we can help like make a memory from that event that people have and they take with them, whether it's not, oh, I was buried for 12 hours and I was dying. It's like, oh, I was going out for my lap at 3 a.m. and my derailleur was screwed up. So these guys took a derailleur off their personal bike to put it on mine just to get a lap done at 3 in the morning because they were still awake. Like they remember that event and that moment. And I love that. I love creating as many of those as possible through these events. So we just show up with everything we can. And if you have a problem, just come by the tent and let's see what we can do. We got zip ties and duct tape. We'll figure it out.
Yeah, no, you guys were awesome. This year, my son's team had two issues. One of
Hmm.
them was with a, larger brand bike company. Waited in line for a long time at the tent and that sort of thing, and didn't really get the issue solved. Which that stuff happens, right? They were low
Mhm.
on some supplies, and there was a lot of people and that sort of thing. Versus, I had forgotten to replace his GoPro mount on his helmet after he had that crash that I mentioned earlier, and it was the notched style. I think Troy Lee,
Mhm.
right? So I brought my regular GoPro plates, but forgot to bring the one that you guys make, which I love. And I sent
Mhm.
him up to your tent with $20, and I said, I'm sure they'll take care of you. Here's $20. We came back with the mount installed on his helmet, three extras because you guys knew that with a team of a bunch of high school kids, but that might be another common occurrence with others. And then he still had his $20. You guys refused the money. So I really appreciate your approach there. Just one other question. And then I have just kind of a fun lightning round
Mhm.
of really simple questions, but you
Sure.
guys have a really interesting story about Red Bull on your website. Could you briefly retell that here for our listeners?
Oh man, Red Bull is this has been kind of a wild thing that has been super fun and totally random. Um, we had Nick Shunk reached out to us randomly on our contact page one day, and for those who don't know who he is this just incredible video director. Does a ton of Red Bull videos. One with Porsche, like hot cold extremes, where it kept flashing between snow drifting to desert dune riding, and like drones flying through the vehicle as it's just an insane level of video production. And they were doing a promotional video for um, F1 for the Red Bull F1 team because there was going to be a race in Las Vegas the following year. So he sent us this email and was like, "Hey, we got this plan. We're going to do a pit crew change on the Las Vegas Strip at night, but we need helmet lights for that. And we wanted something that looked a little more futuristic and not just like a strapped on light. And your lights seemed to work, fit the bill. So can you send us like 30 of those in the next 48 hours?" And the timing for that, like it was a couple years ago, we were smaller, and it was in October. We were out of stock of everything. We had some supply chain issues. We were just behind in the middle of our peak season where we're trying to keep up. And Matt is a big fan of Nick's work, and so he's like, "Let's figure this out." So we took 8 new lights that we cobbled together from parts at headquarters. I had 12 warranty lights that had various levels of repairs that I'd used, some for the demo fleet. And so I just got them as clean as I could possibly make them, made sure that they were good. We actually had to reprogram the lights because they're doing a lot of high speed filming, and they wanted to make sure there was no visible flicker on the high frame rates. And I don't know how high speed they're running, what the frame rate is going to be. So I wanted to be extra sure. So we changed the firmware for our lights, reprogrammed all, sent 8 from headquarters, 12 from where I was, overnight so they could get there. And then they're like, "Great, we'll figure it out." And didn't hear anything for a bit. They came back and said, "Yeah, we lost a couple off the F1 car at 200 miles per hour on the strips." Like, we never tested the aerodynamics at 200 miles an hour. I'll take that. And so that it was just this incredible thing, and we got some really cool shots out of it. It's just a cool thing to be a part of. But then what's even crazier is the original plan was they're going to have the pit crew skydive onto the strip and then with their tools and immediately start working on the car with the parachutes attached and everything. And so the pit crew wasn't the actual pit crew. It was a bunch of Red Bull skydivers, professionals. And one of them really liked the lights. And so he stole it. He kept it. Um, and a year later, he reaches out and said, "Hey, so I'm working with Red Bull. We have this crazy eclipse photo shoot we're trying to get. We're trying to light up the bottom of this plane. Anyways, I kept one of your lights from the F1 photo shoot, and I think it could be perfect for this. Do you want to talk and help us out?" And it was another like, "Oh, we've got 48 hours to put this together." And I had just moved to Bellingham. He was down in Shelton, a 3-hour drive away. But he's a pilot, so he has a small plane. So we talked about the requirements for how the light needs to be spread on the wing so it's visible from 2,000 feet away. And I made a bunch of optic modifications to spread the light more evenly because it's a different application than mountain biking. So I modified all the optics on these lights and got him mounts to put on the plane. And he flew up to meet me at the Bellingham airport to grab lights to then immediately fly down to Texas for the shoot the next day. And after all that, they got it. They got the shot. But during testing, like the setup flights, one of the Evos, I had an Evo mounted on the landing gear with a GoPro mount, pointed back up at the wings with, twisted so that it kind of put the widespread on the wing, um, and one of the GoPro mounts fell off. Um, and so it fell 2,000 feet into a cow pasture. And they found it because the light landed and ended up pointing straight up in the air, still on. So they went
Oh,
into the field, they found it, and they put it back on the plane and sent it back up. And that was like, we weren't allowed to tell that story at the time because there's some concerns around that, but that was definitely the highlight from that. We got these crazy shots from it and basically just told them like, yeah, these are all kind of insane requests and they're all last minute and we are 100% here for it. Next time you have something dumb like this to do, please call us. We'll
oh,
help
that's
out.
awesome.
Yeah, it's been fun.
Well, thanks, Tom. These are great stories and great insight into your products. I love doing this project because I come into it thinking I know a fair amount about a particular subject, and I learn a ton as well. So, just a couple quick, sort of fun lightning round questions. Try to describe your love of night riding with just one word.
One word. Ooh. Mm, different.
Yep. Excellent.
Variety. I mean, it is, I could elaborate a lot, but I think just the fact that it is different
Yeah.
from your day to day, from normal rides is what makes it great for me.
Oh, that's excellent. And one of the things we do with the team that I'm a part of is we'll go, speaking of different, we'll ride the race course at night, but then we'll also do it backwards. And it's like two types of different.
Nice.
What about Portal versus Hangover? What's the big differences?
Lots of differences. Essentially, so Evo is our handlebar trail light. Hangovers are helmet trail light. Portal can kind of fill both use cases. So if you are riding gnarlier, steeper, faster terrain, it's going to be better as a helmet light than Hangover because it's got more punch down the trail, so you can see further out. If you're riding, 30-mile-per-hour shoots out in California or what have
Yeah.
you. Or if you were doing a lot of like cross country racing or gravel riding or bike packing, you can swap the mount on the back of Portal to our handlebar mount, and it'll be a lighter weight, less expensive handlebar light. That actually the beam pattern is still good for that because it's a narrow spot, which for cross country racing you're generally going faster and straighter, and then for gravel riding as well, you're not entering a lot of 90-degree switchbacks. So it has more throw out in front of you where you need it, but it still has more width than Hangover. So it just kind of fills this gap for more specific use cases beyond Hangover and Evo, which together I think cover probably 80% of our use cases for typical mountain bike rides for an average rider around. Um, so yeah, they're pretty much everything about them is different except that they kind of look the same.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. What's the best night ride you've ever done? Kind of the most
Oh
memorable.
man. I got a couple that come to mind. There's one back in North Carolina shuttling that ended with a couple of gnarly crashes. But that's a story for another time. I think the best night ride I actually did was one where I was the only one with lights, and it wasn't even. This is pre-Outbound. I had a flashlight that I always carried with me because I'm one of those nerds, and we were out on the Black Canyon Trail. It was our first time to Phoenix. We did a South Mountain ride the day before. We had rented pivots, and we went up and we're doing from the not from the pie shop down, but like the north to south, like middle section. And we got a couple hours. We got about an hour into it, and we're like, oh wow, we have not made enough progress. We
Yeah.
are going to end up in the dark. And my buddy Dave was with me, and he's like, it's okay. It's a full moon tonight and clear skies, so we'll be able to see. And I'm like, oh, that's not good. So five of us and a dog. About 3 hours into this, what would end up being a 6 hour ride, it's dark, and we're down in the washes, which are dry, and so it's just the trail goes into a wash, the creek, and it's just rocks, and you can't see anything. You
Yeah.
don't know where the trail goes after that. We have no idea what to do. But I don't want to destroy everybody's night vision by, riding with my lights. We've all been riding by moonlight. I pull my flashlight out briefly to shine across the wash, and there's a sign on the other side that's retroreflective. So I can see the little reflective piece shining back at me. Is like, okay, we go that way. And we got onto the trail. We kept going. And, like all the saguaros are casting shadows across the trail. So you can see the trail fine once you let your eyes adjust for about 20 minutes, but the shadows are dark. And you go through those shadows and there might be a loose rock or something, and you're just holding on, just trying to stay upright. And we get to this corner, and the dog, friend Adam's dog, is just barking like crazy. Hadn't made a sound all day. It was just barking like crazy. And so I'm in the back, and I stop to try to grab the dog, and I pull out my flashlight and I shine it. And there's like 1,000-pound longhorn just laying on the ground, staring at this dog, yapping in his face. And I'm like, we got to go. We got to get out, grab the dog. And we run off, and, we get down to the bottom, and it's a shuttle. So we don't have room in the car to go back to get the other car. So I volunteer to stick around with all the bikes while they all go up to get the car. Because it had dropped 30 degrees in that time because it's Arizona. So it was like 70. This is in January. So it's like 75 out during the day, gorgeous. And it's now like 40 degrees out. And I am there in a mesh jersey and shorts and just shivering for an hour while they run back and forth to get the cars. And that was incredible just because of the absurdity of it. Like, it's a memory that sticks with me, kind of like I was talking about earlier. Like, the best rides aren't the ones where I was ripping faster than I've ever ripped. It's like, it's because this was silly and fun, and I got to do it with friends. So I think that's the most memorable one.
That reminds me of, for anybody who enjoys watching YouTube videos on biking, Hardtail Party Channel has one where they go down the BCT, and one of his buddies forgot his clip-in shoes. So he just rode on clipless pedals with regular shoes. And yeah, by the end of it, it's similar stories like, I've done this trail several times. This one's going to be the most memorable because of
Oh yeah.
the difficulty in walking for the next couple of days. And for anybody who's not familiar with that trail, it is an awesome night ride trail because you've got like the mountains off to your west, I guess, where maybe the moon is lighting that up, and then you've got I-17 off to the east where you can kind of see some light trails from the cars, and then you're in between with this amazing landscape. It's just one of my favorite rides. This last one is just to make you laugh, but do you guys offer discount codes?
I'm so glad you asked. No.
Yeah, people can go to your website for that, but you make a fantastic product. You do have some promos throughout the year though, right?
We have one around Black Friday. And honestly, if Black Friday wasn't such a cultural phenomenon in the US, we probably wouldn't do it. But if we don't have a like 10% sale, then we don't sell anything because people keep waiting for the sale to show up. So yeah, we just, as a baseline, we don't do discounts or sales for a couple of reasons. The biggest one is that we want to have a thriving local bike shop network that stock our lights. And I don't know if you've noticed this, but over the past 4 years through COVID, with all the supply chain issues and everything and fire sales, a lot of shops will buy something at their wholesale, and then the next day a customer can buy it direct from the manufacturer for less.
Yeah.
And the bike shops just take a bath. And we just wanted to set it up from the beginning where there's no situation where a bike shop is not making a living off of our product. We want to encourage people to go to local shops instead of direct through us if possible, if they prefer. So we just have a flat program. We just don't do discounts, and we just have the one sale per year. We keep it simple, so it's always the same every time. And I don't know that the general consumer is as sympathetic to that. They'd rather have the discount, but that's where we're at, and we're sticking to it.
No, I really appreciate that. I've definitely experienced that with the manufacturers undercutting the dealers. And I love my local bike shops. And I also love that if I have a problem with outbound lights, I can just bring it to the dealer. They're going to work on it with you. They're probably just going to give me a replacement or something like that. And everybody wins, including the consumer. So, well, thank you so much, Tom. I really appreciate this. I learned a ton about you guys' story and, some additional product features. So hopefully this inspires more people to get out after dark.
Yeah, happy to do it.
Well, thanks again.